after I had my second daughter, I went through a pretty severe case of like postpartum depression and anxiety. And I was really struggling getting through that. And now I know when I start to feel that way, the things that I learned during that stage in life where it was like digging myself out of the hole. I'm like, all right, we don't want to go back in the hole. So let's do all of these things that, keeps you grounded and stable and happy that we don't get to that place. So yes, the big phase and stage for me was just postpartum anxiety.
Alex Snodgrass, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
For those who don't know, Alex is a recipe developer, a content creator, a cookbook author. You're the founder of these sauces called side dish sauces that I saw.
Yes.
I haven't tried any, but they look incredible.
Yes, you can get them at Harris Teeter now, which I know is near you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm going to have to go try those.
Mhm.
And she has amassed a community of like 800,000 people plus on Instagram, and I'm sure many more across other social media platforms, but where most people probably still know you is Instagram, right?
Yes, I think so. That's my main platform. I'm on the other ones, but not as active.
Yeah. So, did I miss anything? Is that the
That's a good
encapsulation?
synopsis. Yes, good synopsis.
So, tell us a little bit about what got you started in this world of starting the Defined Dish food blog.
I've always loved cooking and always been the friend and family member that was making something and then people saying, "How'd you make that?" And long story short, my sister, back when Instagram was in its infancy, was using the platform to promote her fitness business. And she was like, "Hey, we should start an actual website together." And then I was like, "I'll do the recipes that are kind of like fitness focused." And then she was going to do, fitness workouts and whatnot. So I really started that, but it was more of a hobby pretty quickly. And we didn't really know how to turn it into a business. Fast forward 2 years, her life shifted. She wasn't doing personal training anymore and she was getting married. And I was loving uh, sharing recipes and the purpose that it was fulfilling in my life and the joy that it was giving me. So I was like, I'm going to give this a chance and spend a year trying to actually turn it into a business and see what happens. At this point, what do I have to lose? So that's really whenever, you know, everything kind of shifted and I got to where I am today. Like I just went all in. I became more consistent. I shared and just like my platform really started to grow along with Whole30 recipes, really supported me because my recipes were kind of Whole30 focused. And my community grew from there. And then fast forward, got a book deal and that was successful. And 3 books later, and my websites, had got a lot of traction. And here we are.
It's crazy. I love these stories because they're just like the most unexpected things. Like, you're not like you didn't go to any like culinary school or any sort of formal training. You're just someone who loves to cook.
Yep, just a home cook, happy home cook. I love cooking, always have, even since I was a kid, just like took a huge interest in food and helping in the kitchen. So it's been a joy to be able to share my passion and turn it into a business.
Yeah, I love that. And I was doing some research on you, trying to like figure out more about your story. And you started with like a bunch of different jobs. You were like working in real estate, like there was different career paths going on. Was it scary to be like, I'm just going to completely pivot?
Yes and no. Luckily, I had a great fallback because I was so long story short, really, I'll try to keep it brief. I'm not very
No,
good at
give us all
brevity.
the info.
So I, after college, moved to Austin and worked for like a public affairs firm. My now husband and I have been dating for years, but we got pregnant at the time. And so we kind of packed up and we're like, we were really young and it was unexpected. So we were excited, but also very nervous. So we moved back to the DFW area to be closer to home. That's while I was pregnant, I got my real estate license. My parents have their own real estate company in North Dallas. And so I kind of always knew at some point I would end up there. That was just kind of like the path that was in my head all my life. Like I'm going to try to do other things while I'm young, but it'll end up leading me into my dad's practice, in my dad's office. So I was like, all right, I guess it's time. I'm going to go to real estate school and I'm going to start working for the family business. And so I did. And I was doing that. And the blog was really kind of this creative outlet for me on top of it. I wasn't thinking I was going to abandon the whole real estate track ever in my head. I just
Oh,
thought,
okay.
oh, this will be fun to do on the side as a creative outlet. And hopefully it'll make, a little bit of income while I share on it. Until about 2 years into it, I thought, I'm seeing all these people create really healthy businesses from their platforms. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. So that year that I did go all in, it wasn't like I stopped doing what I was doing. So I had a healthy fallback. So it was scary, but it was more like I'm putting myself out there scary rather than like oh shit, if this doesn't work, I'm, left on the street.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Which is,
I was in a very, it was a great position to be in to be able to
yeah.
start my business. I had, a lot of privilege there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like any business, I'm sure there were probably and has probably been some bumps along the road. Have there been any major setbacks where you have kind of questioned, like, should I still be doing this?
I just feel like at this point, the social media aspect is definitely the most daunting and roller coaster ride of it all. And then also, you know, for one thing, it's the putting yourself out there, and that is an emotional roller coaster. But then there's also I have realized I can't put all my eggs in the social media Instagram outlet as my income because it's rapidly changing all the time. And I mean, a lot of my friends are realizing like this year, there's brands are shifting and there's just so many changes. And that can be really scary if you're only making income on your social media platform. So I've really, over the last 3 to 4 years, kind of realized that. And so fortunately, I have my cookbooks and then also my blog, which is really kind of my mothership and
Yeah.
where people can always find me in this ever, fast paced changing world. So
Yeah.
yes, a lot of shifts there. And it's always just kind of being able to sit back, look at everything from a bird's eye view, seeing what's, still authentic to you while you make some changes in your business. But, I think being able to diversify your income sources, especially in the business that I am, is extremely, extremely important. And every year I'm realizing it more and more.
Amen to that. Have you ever felt some of the pressures that I know when I talk to a lot of content creators, we've all kind of felt like we have to like edit ourselves and our content to kind of fit the themes and trends going on. Do you feel like you've stayed pretty true to your roots that you started back in, well, you started your blog in 2015. So it's been 9 years
Yeah,
now. Or do you
totally.
feel like you've kind of adapted maybe in some ways sometimes to fit other people or just adapted to fit like your new self? Because that's okay too.
I feel like it's been a little bit of it all. I feel like for me personally, whenever I start to do something that's not true to me, it feels off and it feels
Yeah.
weird and I immediately stop. So when I have maybe, promoted something or shared my recipes in a new way, trying to keep up with the Joneses online, I recognize it and it feels funky to me and I stop and I shift gears because it's just I I just can't do it. It's just not who I am. So, I feel like I have, because of that, stayed very true to me. Have I had to change the way that I share? That's why I love making cookbooks the most. It's because it's what I love to do and what my business is in its rawest form. It's a recipe and
Yeah.
people cook it. I don't need to put on a hula hoop. I don't need to dance in front of the camera. I don't need to do anything. And that is chef's kiss. So with that being said, I have had to, with the way that video's going in the world and sharing recipes on Instagram, like just a photo doesn't do it. It doesn't get any views. And therefore nobody's cooking my recipes and therefore my business is failing.
Yeah.
So I have had to shift gears into a place of where I'm not naturally comfortable, but I feel like I have found different ways to do it in a way that still feels true to me, where I don't feel like a phony or that I'm just sharing the same things because they're going to go viral or whatever. Like that's
Yeah.
been kind of tricky because there's so many different routes you can take as a content creator. And for me, what's authentic to me is to continue to share my recipes, but put myself out there a little bit more and be willing to do video content whenever it's not necessarily something that has felt natural to me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean,
So,
I guess, and that's like the magic sauce, no pun intended, as a sauce company
yeah,
owner
sauce
yourself.
girly.
Yeah. But I really do feel like that's like the magic point of adapting and still like getting with the times, but feeling like you're remaining true to yourself. Cause I completely understand what you're saying. Like you said, you can just like feel when something feels super inauthentic. And I get so
Yeah,
embarrassed. I'm like, did I really post that? Like, why was I not just myself? But sometimes you can feel so much pressure to like put on a
yeah,
face or put on whatever you need to just to get views or
totally.
whatever
And
it
that's
is.
part of the business world is, sometimes you throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And when it
Yeah.
doesn't stick, you feel it. And it's like that did not land well because it didn't feel true to me. And I think your audience sees it, especially with the community that I've spent so many years building that knows me as a person and that evolving with me. I think I love that my community is willing to evolve with me, but I think they know whenever I'm evolving in a way that's not true to me too.
Yeah.
So it's not just me feeling it, the collective off feeling that we all are like,
Yeah.
ick. But, I think there was at one point in my business that I had a really like, oh man, I'm getting off. I'm going down a track that's just like all about numbers and not about what I'm here for. And I had a big moment of like, I'm taking a 2 week hiatus. I had a different management that I was working with. I left them. I canceled a bunch of my partnerships that I didn't feel like were authentic to me. I just like ripped off a bunch of band-aids and looked at everything from a bird's eye view and then just settled back into a place that I knew was where I wanted to be as a business owner and as I was growing my business for, just my emotional well-being. And at the end of the day, like cooking is my sense of joy, my pride. It's who I am as a person in so many ways. It defines me a lot. So if I do my business in a way and conduct my business in a way where I grow to hate cooking,
Yeah.
I am losing a piece of like my identity as a person. And I started to feel that disconnect with something that's always been such an important part of my life. And I was like, something's got to change or else this is not going to work for me anymore. So I'm really glad
Yeah.
this was like 2, 3 years ago. I can't even keep up, probably 3 years ago. So that 2 week hiatus was exactly what I needed. So sometimes you just got to pivot and look at things from a bird's eye view.
I love that. It reminds me of a quote that I posted once that I really loved that was like something to the effect of, it's okay to disappear for a bit until you feel like yourself again. And I feel like
Hmm.
that 2 week hiatus for you on social
That was
media,
it.
it's like it's similar to like in life too. Like sometimes you just have to turn the phone off, turn the TV off, like go, I don't know, to the mountains and just recenter yourself. And there's like
Totally.
no rules about, you feel like sometimes you can't do that. Like, oh no, this is
Mhm.
your job. You have to be on all of the time. And I love that
Yep.
you were just like, no, I can take
Yeah.
time off.
No,
You don't
it's
owe
very
anyone
healthy.
anything.
I think we all need a good, healthy getaway from it all. And no matter what that looks like for you, whether it's just turning off social media and deleting the app for 2 weeks or going to the mountains for 2 weeks and getting away from social media. I just think it's really important to just connect with yourself and realize when you are or are not being true.
If you are listening to this podcast, you are probably a fan of inspirational quotes. And if that's the case, then you should check out my book. I feel that it's a cute little retro book with each chapter being a different emotion and then quotes that can help you with that emotion. So if you're looking to support me or the show, if you need a cute little gift for a friend or just something to flip through when you're feeling down one day, then this book is for you. You can purchase it at quotesbychristie.com, which is my website, or the link will be in the show notes.
Well, Alex, the question of the show, do you have a best piece of advice that you feel like you've ever gotten?
Like the one thing that I feel like I always turn to, whether it's in business or raising my kids or just life in general, that my mom always said, like during those moments of life where you're just like feel crippled by whatever's going on, however big or small, she would always say phases and stages. She was like a big Willie Nelson fan. And it's just like this one quote that has constantly stuck with me as, I am like navigating being a mom and the phases that my kids go through. And when they feel like, in fifth grade, something happened and their life is over. And you're like, this is all just a phase and a stage and you're going to get through it. And it's really been this kind of core quote that I've stuck to in those moments that I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how am I gonna get through this moment?" And remembering that, like, my mom always said that, and we always got through it, and you always figure it out. So phases and stages is my quote.
I love that. As a almost new mom, I'm expecting my first. I feel like that has been the best advice that I think my sister's actually the one who told me that someone told her, like, everything is just a season. Like, everything
Yes,
about raising kids is just a season and it can feel overwhelming. And
mhm,
I just love that idea though, because you feel like if it doesn't last forever, you can get through it. But I think sometimes our brains convince us that it does last forever, and that's what feels
totally,
unbearable.
exactly. Always, every time you hit that, like, you get on this great path, whether it's in parenting or business, and you're like, everything's running smooth, and then you hit that obstacle, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, this is never gonna end. How are we gonna get through it?" Especially I think as a parent, it's even more crippling because you're like, how can I help my little one like get through this moment in time? And it
Yeah.
just feels like, so hard, but it always prevails. We always
Yeah.
get through it in some capacity.
Yeah. Do you feel like there have been times in your life where you have more strongly felt like this feels really permanent to me, and looking back, you're like, wow, that really was again just a phase.
I mean, yes, I feel like there's been many a times, but I feel like the main one for me was after I had my second daughter, I went through a pretty severe case of like postpartum depression and anxiety. And I was really struggling getting through that. And I didn't know, I hadn't struggled with anxiety in the past and I just like didn't know how to place it. And once I kind of realized what I was in the midst of, getting through that moment, I was like, Is this just my life now? Am I always going to feel overwhelmed, anxious, fearful, afraid of everything, emotionally like distraught? Like, I just didn't see an end in sight. Um, and it was one of those things that I had to really work through and figure out the things that I need to do on a day to day basis to take care of my needs, to make sure that I didn't feel this crippling anxiety. And so that was probably for me my biggest pit working through and biggest phases and stages that I was just like, this is how I am now. Like how horrible is it? Like I just didn't think there was an end in sight. And so once I started to see, a glimmer of hope, I was like, okay, I can feel better again. And now I know when I start to feel that way, the things that I learned during that stage in life where it was like digging myself out of the hole. I'm like, all right, we don't want to go back in the hole. So let's do all of these things that keeps you grounded and stable and happy that we don't get to that place. And it's really just being able to recognize that. So yes, the big phase and stage for me was just postpartum anxiety.
Yeah. Do you feel like now looking back to that stage of life, uh, even though it was tremendously hard, helped kind of make you into the person you are today, like gave you attributes
Totally.
that
Yes. And I feel like every phase and stage, as my mom and Willie Nelson says, um, is a learning lesson in some capacity. I've always been the caretaker type, which was fine growing up. It was never like this crippling thing. But when you become a mom, as opposed to like a roommate taking care of, your roommates and whatnot, which doing little things for them here and there, when you become a mom and a wife, and it's way more of a caretaking role and you're not taking care of yourself on top of it. That's really what I realized at the time. I was like, wow, I'm taking care of every single person around me and not taking the time of day to tend to my own personal needs. Um, and I realized if I don't do that, I can't be the amazing caretaker that I have, like, capabilities of being. And so it was just a big revelation for me of like, here's my checklist so that I can be present and the ultimate mom and caretaker and wife that I want to be in life. So that for me, that phase and stage was a big learning curve and taught me a lot about just tending to my basic needs as a mom.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I was listening to a different podcast interview you did, but is that what inspired you to start kind of trying the Whole30 diet and then that kind
Yes.
of also spiraled into what you're doing now?
My sister encouraged me to do the Whole30 and I felt great mental clarity. And, when you do a Whole30, it's really you have to put a lot of time and work in. And I just realized I wasn't putting the time and work into myself throughout the day. So it really just kind of set off a chain reaction of taking care of myself by doing a Whole30. And through that, after about a week of eating like the boring chicken and broccoli thing, which is not my cup of tea, I've got to have flavor, wow meals. I started to get super creative with the ingredients that I could use. And I was like, great, like I can do this all day. I'm eating real food. I can, take these ingredients and create what I'm craving just using like different ingredients. And I found a knack for it and was sharing those recipes. And that really helped my blog blossom tremendously because people were looking for that. They were looking for exciting meals within the Whole30 guidelines. And I was able to offer those. So it was a big chain reaction in so many ways for me.
Yeah. Just so wild how something that is so hard and so terrible to go through can end up leading to like probably one of the biggest blessings of your life is having this business.
100%. Yes. Yes.
I love that. Um, do you have a piece of advice then that you would give to someone who maybe feels like you did at one of your lowest points and maybe it was dealing with that postpartum anxiety, maybe it was another point in your business or your personal life? What would you tell them to kind of help them along when they feel like their phase is never ending?
Well, I think the main thing to remember is that it can end and it really just is putting in the effort into getting on the other side of it, whatever it may be. And whether it's, finding if it's a motherhood thing and your kid is struggling and finding them a great occupational therapist to work with, or just getting your family in a place of knowing that as a group and as a unit, you can work through it. Or if it's just like a self discovery, really looking to your core and being like, all right, let's try some things. Let's see what sticks, just like you do in business. And give it like try, I was trying yoga. I'm not a yoga person. I was trying anything just to figure out what made me feel better. And it took me, I had to kiss a lot of frog, but I got through that phase because I wanted to get through it so that I could be more present in my family's life and not be miserable. So I just think it's just the reminder that it is a stage and you will get through it. It takes work and effort and life is hard, but it's just a journey and you can always work through these hardships at the end of the day.
That's beautiful. Do you have any advice as a businesswoman, as someone who has created this really successful blog and cooking empire? Do you have any advice for someone who maybe is trying to tap into one of their passions?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, just be willing to make some mistakes along the way. I think so many people see, content creation or all these businesses um, that look so put together and buttoned up, and that is what you're trying to achieve. But like, you have to remember, I started off like taking like the most nasty pictures of my food, trying to promote my recipes, and it has been a journey to get where I am now. I outsource all my photography, but like when I started, I didn't have the money to do that, so I was YouTubing how to take better food photos and just making it work. And I think if you're really passionate about something and you really want to make it work, you just have to be willing to try new things and put yourself out there and be willing to make mistakes, because coming out of the gate and having this perfect business with the perfect business plan is like, good luck to that. I just think it's impossible to get started and not being willing to take the hit along the way.
I love that.
As someone who just started my new business, Side Dish, which is a totally different business, I'm reminding myself that things are going to happen. We're going to run into obstacles, especially in the CPG world. And just knowing that I have to be willing to make some mistakes along the way to be a wonderful business. And I'm reminding myself of all these tips right now.
I love asking any chefs or cooks this question because I am always trying to selfishly better my skill. But what's your top pieces of cooking advice for like newbie chefs and cooks, at home cook? What have been the biggest things that you're like, this changed the way that I cook food?
Totally. I feel like whenever I talk to my friends that like hate cooking or are scared of it, they do one thing wrong. It's like they decide one day they're going to start cooking and they try to cook every night of the week, and it's way too overwhelming. So
Yeah.
don't bite off more than you can chew. Pick like Tuesdays and Thursdays to be your nights to cook. Find something that you know is going to be like a skillet dinner or something simple and approachable, and start with that. Secondly, the other tip that I always tell them is, before you start cooking and before you turn on the heat, make sure that everything is mise en place, like in its place, chopped up, ready to go, organized. You'll feel way better as you're cooking. You won't feel overwhelmed trying to, cut up the onion while the garlic is burning. And you'll have way more success, where you'll feel that like burst of energy whenever you have a successful meal. You're going to be like, okay, I can do this, rather than that was really overwhelming. This doesn't taste right. I burnt something. So having everything in place, don't overdo it. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Start with 2 days a week. Get kind of, your toes wet first. And then third piece is just try to have some fun with it. I feel like cooking is just this like overwhelming, daunting sense of stress in so many people's life. And we just feel like we don't have time to do it. And I think if you kind of I always take Sunday morning, takes me about 2 hours to kind of clean out my refrigerator. And maybe for someone who's not as professional at grocery shopping, it would maybe take 3 to 4 hours. But, take that morning to out with the old meal plan. Like, I just kind of plan out like what I'm cooking for dinner each night. Maybe it's just 2 nights for you, and go to the grocery store and stock your fridge and just prepare yourself and get excited about sitting around the table and like having a home cooked meal, rather than just like, I don't know. I just think it's such an important time to connect with yourself, even if you're cooking with yourself, and having that moment of like just putting down the phone and eating dinner. And just, even if you're watching a TV show, it's better than staring at your phone, or connecting around the table with your family. I just feel like those moments are not appreciated enough in our society today. And I think it's like this simple act that has always been around since like humankind. It's just like dinner time with the people around you. And it's this like lost art. And it's this one thing that can really bond us and connect us. And I think it's so simple, but so important.
Yeah, absolutely. It almost sounds like being organized helps make life easier, which is something I feel like none of us want to hear.
No.
I try and do that with recipes too, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to be really organized about it. And then you're just like, well, I think you like trick yourself into thinking it can go faster if you just kind of do it step by step. And that's never
totally. No, it goes faster if you just chop it all ahead of time.
Yeah.
But once you get
100%.
really good, then you can chop while you cook.
That's true. That's true. But the key word, once you get really good.
Yeah, just give it some time. Baby steps.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice, though. I feel like that's such implementable advice. I don't know if implementable is a word. If it's not,
It is
it's
now.
advice you can easily implement. There we go. That's what I'm getting at. Last but not least, I would love to know if you have a favorite quote, a favorite mantra. We clearly love quotes around here. And just something that maybe has stuck with you, maybe right now or maybe throughout your life.
I mean, other than the phases and stages one, I'd say that quit caring so much about what other people think. That's the other one. Because at the
It's
end
tried
of the
and true.
day, I always remind myself in these moments where I'm feeling pressure to do something online or, whatever it may be. I remembered that the opinions of the people around my dinner table and how they feel about me are the only ones that truly matter at the end of the day. Because they know my true intent and I know my true intent, and they know me, and it, that's really all that matters. So I have to remind myself of this often, but it's like one of those things that you want to go back and tell your younger self and remind yourself constantly is quit caring so much.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Alex, thank you so much for joining us on the show. This has been such a fun chat, and thanks for all the delicious food that you have shared and
Thanks.
sharing your talents with all of us, worldwide, I guess, at this point.
Well, thank you.
Tell everyone where we can go to continue supporting you and your work and your cookbooks. Give us
Yeah.
all the names and
Um,
handles.
I'm pretty easy to find because it's pretty much the Defined Dish all around. My blog's thedefinedish.com, Instagram, TikTok, The Defined Dish. And my cookbooks are, the first one's The Defined Dish, the second one's The Comfortable Kitchen, and then my newest one is Dinner Tonight. So I recommend, if you're new to my recipes, either getting my first book or my third book. They're both really approachable skillet dinners, and easy to cook through.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. And for everyone watching, listening, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe. Let us know what you think of the episode, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.